Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So in the past, we did a couple group videos where we demonstrated putting all the components of nonviolent communication together, the observations, feelings, needs, and requests. First, we applied it to when our needs are not being met. And then we also applied it to when our needs are being met. And we didn't have time in the group to do this together, but I wanted to give you also some examples of using those four components of nonviolent communication with the parts inside of you. So when you have two polarized parts inside of you that essentially have competing needs, competing values, different perspectives, maybe different experiences, but they're protecting different things and they think it's either or, but nonviolent communication, the self as the mediator can bring nonviolent communication to them and say, what if it's both and? What if all your needs are valuable and we can together get creative about a solution? So I wanted to apply that to a couple of my own examples. So there's this worksheet that I'll attach below. It's kind of a script, and you can see on the top here, we went through using it when our needs are being met, and then when our needs are not being met. And at the bottom here is mediating between two polarized inner parts. So it looks like this. Part of me, and if you name your parts, you can name them, or you can just give it a descriptor to help you understand what kind of part that is. But part of me is judging another part of me as, and then give the judgment, because they have specifically observed. So usually when you say to yourself, oh, I'm so stupid, right? What that really is a part of you saying that another part, it thinks another part of you is stupid. And then you can get curious about, well, what's your direct observation beneath that label or that judgment of stupid? What specifically happened and what are you worried about, right? So you can really get reflective about the observation behind the judgment. Now, just like we did with different people in a conflict, we're going to look at what the first part is feeling and then assess what's the need underneath, need or needs. And then do the same with the second part. What's the second part feeling and what do they need? And then we're going to think of a solution that meets both parts' needs. And then we might think of a different strategy just to practice that muscle of creative problem solving. But in order to be a viable solution, it has to meet both parts' needs. So let me just give you a couple of examples from my recent life. So I just filled in the blanks and I'm going to read it to you. So part of me that I'll call wifey is judging another part of me I'll call mama bear as prioritizing my child and neglecting my husband. So that's the judgment. Because this part, the wifey part, specifically observed the mama bear part saying no to an agreed upon activity with my husband in order to help my son with his school project. Okay, so I saw this prioritization of the son over my husband, and so these parts are in conflict. The one that prioritizes my husband and the one that prioritizes my children were in direct conflict there. So the first part, the wifey part, was feeling frustrated because she needed connection. And ultimately, when I got really curious with her, she said she wouldn't feel good. She wouldn't feel like a good wife. And then she would lose connection with her husband. That was her fear. So she was also afraid. And then the second part, the mama bear part, was feeling sad because she was being shamed by the other part. And she needed understanding and autonomy to change plans and do something different, and understanding about prioritizing her son. So as the self, I'm listening to both of these parts, the part that is invested in not letting down my husband and the part that's invested in helping my son. and they both make sense, and they both have beautiful values and needs. So as the mediator, myself says, okay, what about, proposes a solution. What if we help our son for an hour and then meet with our husband for an hour? Or if we kind of divide the time equally? So that could potentially work. And again, then I'm going to listen to my part's responses to that. Another strategy might be to help my son with his project, since that's something in the immediate, and to reschedule and have a special time and a different time with my husband, which is actually what I ended up doing. And I kind of spoke for the parts to my husband, which is generally effective with safe people, to be able to say, part of me really is really dedicated to you and really wants to spend time with you and doesn't want to lose connection with you. But another part of me, that's this mama bear, is really worried about our son's project and really wants to help him with that. Can we do our activity at this later time? Right. And my husband was very understanding and fine with that. So often, it's what it didn't have anything to do with anyone else. It's not like my husband and my son were actually competing for my time and attention. The parts inside of me were the ones doing that. And so as soon as I could recognize that, then I could have just a little meeting with those parts and come up with a viable solution. Okay, so I'm going to give you another example. This one was, again, about saying no. I do have a part that really has a hard time in general saying no to any person in front of me. And so I actually had a week where several people asked me for things that another part of me did not want to give. But in this specific case, someone was asking me to do something for them. And so I'll fill in the blanks here. Okay, so a part of me who I know as Cassandra, but she's a people-pleasing part. She's very dominant for a long time in my system. She was judging another part of me who I call Sebastian, but he's basically my self-agency, self-defense part, really protective of my own time and energy. So Cassandra, the people pleaser, was upset with Sebastian, the self-agency part, judged him as rude because the observation was that I said no to this person's request. And Cassandra, the people pleaser, judged that as rude. Cassandra, the people pleaser, felt fearful because her history was that she learned that it wasn't safe to say no, because then the person might lash out or you might lose connection. So her need was for safety and connection and relationship. And Sebastian, my self-agency part that said no, felt anger and disgust, kind of that aversion response, right? When the request came in, he was like, no, because that is competing with our need for autonomy and for rest. So you can see here that these two parts, Cassandra is protecting my need for connection and safety with the other person. Sebastian is protecting my need for autonomy and rest. They both are so beautiful. They both are protecting very valuable needs and have good intentions. So when they're both on the table and they can see each other, I see your good intentions. Then they can begin to work together with the mediation of the self on a solution that might meet both. So the first solution often for me is to communicate for both of the needs to the person. So I might tell them, there's a part of me that really wants to please you and really wants to say yes and doesn't want to risk losing connection with you or you being upset. But another part of me knows that I just don't have the energy. I don't have the time and that I need to rest. And so that part I need to say no, right? Something like that. Another possible solution is to work together with those parts on, is there a limited specific amount of time and energy that I could give freely, that I could give without that aversion response? Like maybe the person is asking for 2 hours, but maybe I could give 20 minutes and then I can offer that. So often, sometimes when people will ask me for, to meet with them one-on-one in a video call or in person, and I don't have the time and energy to do that, I will put on the table, what do you think about leaving me voice clips? And then I can respond to you in voice clips when I have time in little increments, right? So instead of saying no completely, and it's black and white, that's it, I ask myself, what amount of attention or time and energy do I have available? And what if I offered that? And usually people are very responsive and happy with that. And if they aren't, right, if they insist, they make a demand, you must meet with me here or I'm going to punish you, then we learn, oh, now my need for safety is unmet and I may need to back up even further from you, right? Like my no, it actually confirms my no. Ooh, right? But most people, if they're safe people and we express our genuine needs, they respond well. So I hope you appreciate those examples of some of the inner parts that I've had recently. There's so many examples. So I encourage you to just get really curious. It could be parts that have patterns in your life in general, right? Like procrastinator and taskmaster, or kind of that like people pleaser versus self-agency part, the caretaking part and the part that just wants to rest, right? You notice bigger patterns in your life, but I encourage you to pick a very specific incident to apply this to. Because if you do the work to really get curious about the specific, it will actually then apply on a wider scale to the pattern that shows up repeatedly for those parts. And if you have any questions as you try to do this work, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I am happy to respond to you when I have the time and energy. I will do that.